the cloud. So the lab that you're going to do is very similar to what we would do in the physical lab, except we would have used vernier equipment, and we would actually be walking to match the graph. So you have the matching the graph. We're going to use the iOLab with its software. And this lab, I have rewritten the laboratory, so you'll actually have screenshots in the paper version of the lab. So when we call it up, you're going to actually see that screenshot. I'm going to do that. I'm going to show you that here in the video in just a second. You're going to use the wheel function of the iOLab, and you'll get this kind of a graph. And what you're going to try to do is you're going to try and match this type of graph. I am not looking for perfection, because you're never going to absolutely get this graph identical, right? It won't happen. I am not looking for perfection. The objective of this lab is, number one, make sure that you can work with your IO device. And number two, can you start seeing the motion that we see graphically with the actual physical motion of an object? So while you're going to try and match this graph, I'm looking for something close. I'm not looking for exact times. I'm looking for, we started at 0 and we moved in one direction, we stopped and we moved in the other direction. So that's basically what we're after. We're looking at velocity, and what I'm looking for in your laboratory memo are answers to these kinds of questions. So you can see I'm not asking for a whole lot. I do want a screenshot of your graph that you got, so that I can see that motion that you got. But the idea here really is to make sure that you got your iOLab working, you received your iOLab, and then that you get a better handle on that description of motion during the graphing. So you will do a laboratory memo, and you're going to put that information in there. So that's what you're going to do. So let's look at the iOLab here. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And I'm going to do my advanced sharing. All right, so you should see a piece of paper and my iOLab. So these also, your iOLab will come out. You're going to want to put your screw in, because that's how you're going to work with the lab. You have these 3 wheels, and then you will have an on button. One of the things that you want to look at on your iOLab is you'll see the configuration here. This gives you a Y direction, an X direction, and a Z direction. And you'll see that you have an X, Y, and Z direction on the back as well. So when I put my iOLab on the wheels, you can see that you can roll it back and forth. So it's going to roll just like a cart back and forth. This is where the USB fob is, and I think we talked about that. For some of you guys on MacBooks, you're probably going to have to get the USB to USB connector, because this is a traditional USB fob that's going to look very similar to the regular. It'll have this kind of an end on it. The fob has this kind of an end on it, and your connector that might go in will have a USB-C connector. And I'm just going to look for another. It's just, so some of you are going to need a connector that looks like this, and you can get a little gizmo from Best Buy or Amazon that will give you the USB connector to one of those. So if you are running into trouble of getting your iOLab, please let me know. Last week I did a short video as to how to obtain the iOLab. It is not at the OSU bookstore. You have to go through the NFC bookstore to get it. and you can actually get that part there. So that's the iOLab. So let's see, I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to stop my screen. I'm going to change my screen here. New share. And I'm going to go back to screen 2. I'm going to share that. And when you get your iOLab, this is the icon that you'll see on your desktop once you install the software. I'm trying to find out where it's hiding. There it is. All right. I've got more than one. Hang on. There's my window. So here's the window when it comes up. And on the window, you can see right now it's not seeing the device. So I have to go in and I have to make sure I'm going to turn on my device. And as soon as I turn on my device, you can now see that it's recognizing it. So down here, you can see all the different sensors that are on the IO device. We're going to click the wheel sensor. And as soon as I click the wheel, it's going to give me my position versus time plot, my velocity versus time plot, and my acceleration versus time plot. So if you remember what that first graph kind of looked like, what we're going to do is we'll hit record, and my IO device is standing still, but now I'm going to go away or forward. You'll start to play with how the device works. And you may have to get a table that's pretty wide and pretty backwards, but now you can see I've reproduced that plot very similar to what you saw in the graph. So you're going to learn how to manipulate your IO device. You can play with it. You can do various things with it. You can stop. Once you stop, it'll plot the data that you get. It has a marker in here, and you can actually read data right off of your graphs. You can actually manipulate your graphs. You can save your graphs. You can go to this tool, and it talks about how many charts. This is where you'll do your calibration. So you have those. So you've got different things that you can work with, different plotting. And as we work with the IO device, you're going to see more and more options with it. So the lab we're doing is fairly simple. You're just making sure you know how to use your iOLab, and you're trying to match the graph in that hard document that we had there. So again, where you will find the graph, this is our second laboratory. It's motion matching. You've already got instructions that I've done this a couple of times before. I may have explained it better in that one than I've explained it tonight. This is the lab. This is actual paper copy of the lab. That's an alternate version. I will upload this version. This is just a click it and acknowledge that you've received your iOLab. And again, you guys can work as partners. You guys can get together and work as partners. That's fine. The only thing is I want everyone to write their own lab report and discuss what they found on those questions. And then you'll submit your lab report, and I'm giving you until Saturday, the 10th of February to do the lab. So questions? Anything you want me to show you again? I'm not seeing any in the chat. Yeah, you have a question, Ethan?
Oh, no, sorry. I just didn't realize my camera was off, so I was turning it on. And
Okay.
no.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
That
All right.
screen that you were just on, was that what you wanted this screenshot of?
Yeah. When you get your graph match, that's what you're going to want your screenshot with. And you can take a picture with your phone. That'll work. If you know how to do a screenshot on your computer, that'll work. So